Thank you, Udin, and delighted to be here. Let me start by saying that a public discussion of sexuality is taboo in the Indian workplace, right? And homosexuality is even more so. So in that sense, this is a delicate and sensitive subject. Having said that, by not talking about it, the problem doesn't go away. And this whole attitude of don't ask, don't tell kind of a attitude in workplaces has actually created a very large closet in which people are sitting in. And businesses don't realize that there is a huge cost to doing that. You know, an employee who's not able to be out, and just like what Udayan shared in the presentation just before we started, there is a cost for organizations which they're probably not realizing because it's not in their face. Now, you talked about Section 377. Now, if you really look at Section 377, it says any kind of carnal intercourse that is not
against the order
of nature. Yeah. Right? Now, against the order of nature is a very vague kind of term, and there are lots of misinterpretations of this. And somewhere along the way, it has, it covers things like anal sex, oral sex, and those kinds of things, which is not only homosexuals that indulge in. So in that sense, everybody is covered. So it's kind of a very vague term as I see it. But having said that, it's not about the law so much. It is actually about the identity of the individual. And as far as organizations are concerned, and as far as the law says, it says if you're caught in the act pretty much, and hopefully that's not happening in our organization. So being homosexual does not mean that you are a criminal or, you can be arrested right away or any of that. It's the law, if you interpret it, is only that if you're caught in the act. And since organizations are very unlikely to have that problem, they're not even looking at that, the ones that are progressive. But I understand where Udayan is coming from. Most organizations say, oh, 377 exists, so we don't want to talk about it. And sometimes they are coming from the angle that if I have employees that are out, then am I putting them in danger outside of the organization? I can give them that sense of comfort in the organization, but outside the organization, they could be open to, harassment and violence, and therefore they say that's another reason why we don't want to talk about it. But I think today this is a subject that's kind of being talked about a lot more. We are socializing people around it, and the new generation is a lot more open to this. And I think also as a consultant, more than talking about this from the legal angle or the social moral angle, if you talk about it from the business angle, I think it makes a lot more sense. Now, culturally, we can all have different views on a subject like this, but when you talk business, money speaks the same language across cultures, right? So when you say there is a business cost if you're not engaging fully with your talent pool, then they tend to understand this better, and I think we try to do that with organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
So Nirmala, if I got you.
Okay. This was something that was actually initiated by IBM last February. Actually, it's exactly a year old now, where IBM came up with this thought and said, look, everybody's talking about this. They're talking about it in closed rooms. Can we as organizations come together and use our collective cloud to influence public policy? So that was an interesting thought, and we had the first meeting in February last year, and 32 senior leaders from different companies came. So there were 32 companies that were represented. This was just a trial to see what kind of support there would be, what kind of interest there would be. And once we were done with that forum, they said, hey, can we meet again? This seems to be a space that we want to engage with. And so we had the second meeting in September last year. Now, in between what happened was, and in that panel, we actually talked to organizations about how saying this is not a criminal offense to have LGBT employees in your organization, et cetera, but still organizations went back and said, we want to stay safe. Yeah, so nobody wanted to engage with the community. So around this time, we were checking with people, and then we realized that LGB is in a sense more you need to reveal it yourself. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking. But transgender is very visible in a sense. So they tend to be marginalized. Even in the LGBT community, the T is actually far more marginalized. And somehow since 2014, the transgender bill, the act came, which said that we are recognizing them as a third gender. So somewhere we sensed in organizations the approval that, maybe we can work in the transgender space because that has government approval, but we don't want to work with the LGB space, right? So, okay, so let's start somewhere. And so, using that motto that we must get started with something, we said, why don't we work with this community? And to be honest, Interview, we've not worked with this transgender community before this. So it was a new experience for me, and I can tell you for anybody else here in the group, it would be the same, that I was wondering what this was going to be like, how is it going to be? And actually I thought we'd go out and tell these people on the road, hey, we'll give you jobs in companies, come over. They would just kind of be very happy about the opportunity they got. But that's not how it panned out. Mobilizing the community took the longest time. Yeah, so they were all very suspicious. And if you think about it, like Naina was saying, when we see them at traffic lights, like we were all talking about even in the previous forum, we see them together in a group. And we are kind of, we think they're very aggressive. But they are being aggressive because they are scared of us. Because just so many people that harass them that they come in a group. Because coming alone for them is, kind of exposing themselves to violence. So all of that. So they put up this, face of aggression. And we said, okay, let's start talking to this community, asking them. So we had to cut a long story short, it was a long journey, and we had about 60 people that came for the orientation, and we told them exactly what it's going to be like in the mainstream. You cannot be aggressive, you will need to have certain etiquette when you meet with people, you can't intimidate them, etc., etc. And told them, look, we will work with you, we will skill you, and see if we can place you in organizations, in mainstream jobs, not necessarily in large organizations, but wherever we can find you, but into mainstream jobs. So people get to interact with you, and maybe that visibility itself will help you become more included in society. So that's how it started, as an experiment. And out of this, we filtered people that were really interested. And, like Naina was saying, for a lot of people, telling them, look, come into my organization, we'll give you 10,000 rupees a month. They're like, hey, that's not attractive because I'm making more money outside. Right? So it's not like they were willing to give up all of that and come very quickly, but then we did get a group of about 15 people that came. Many of them had run away from home, didn't have educational certificates to support. They had no family at all. They were very, very dependent on their community itself for support. And I think data entry, we had a few people that had data entry experience. Some of them were gardeners, some of them were cooks, But we said, whoever is interested in moving into mainstream, we'll help you find a job. And so they came in, and for 2 weeks, they went through an orientation program. They had to wake up at 6 o'clock, stay in the classroom till 6 in the evening, from 9 to 6, which is not something that they are used to. Yeah, so for a lot of them, and that is how we assess their commitment to this program. And once they graduated from the program, we said, we'll help you find jobs. And that became another different conversation. So all the organizations that said this is great said now, hey, these people don't have the certificates, our policies don't allow us to hire people like this. Plus, of course, for a lot of organizations, they didn't have the jobs that they were qualified for as well. So we said, okay, so could you have your facilities people or your vendors, your housekeeping, your security, admin, etc., hire them, because many of them don't have the formal qualifications that are required for companies, but you can influence your vendors to hire them. And again, that's not been an easy journey. We are still on it, but we just completed the program end of January. We have placed 4 of them out of the group of 15. And we worked very closely with an organization called Solidarity Foundation, because they work on the ground with the community. So it's not like, we could just walk in there and get their trust. So we had to go through that organization, and they did the background verification, etc. The other 11, we have arranged for interviews for them. Some of them are interviewed, and we are waiting to get results. So again, we did not say that, hey, you're a transgender person, we've put you through this program, we will place you. He said, you go through the process, so you feel that sense of pride that you got the job. Yeah, so there have been some of them who've been rejected by one company and then picked up by another. So we're trying to make it as normal a process as possible. So if there are any organizations here that are interested to support this, please reach out to us, and it would be a great support to both monetary as well as funding is also a huge challenge for us, and for the placement, particularly for placement, because we want this to be a success. Because if it is a success, there's a lot of interest for us to scale it in other locations as well.
Internally. So we're completely out of time. Nirmala, you want to say something?
One quick thing. You know, when we talk about the LGBT community, we talk about them as them. It's really not them. They are our friends, our neighbors, in our family even, you know. So it's just giving them the chance to be accepted. That's really what we want, and we want organizations to do that. We are doing that. So as they are being absorbed in these organizations, we are working with the teams, and Solidarity Foundation is a specialist in this space. And you know, they've helped Naina with her acceptance in the organization. The same thing we are doing with the organizations that have accepted these trans people. So we are certainly working on that. And you know, the challenge for organizations, and you know, once this program gets to be known, hopefully we will have more people registering, because they're just waiting on the sidelines, waiting to see if this is taking off, whether these people are getting jobs. Because some of them hesitated to come on the program saying, we already have a job outside. We don't want to leave that and come and not know that we'll get a job. So if we can do a 100% placement in this, we will have more qualified people as well coming in. You know, so it's a huge initiative, really, in that sense.
How about HP and N?
Just to add to what you've said, Suresh, you know, if organizations are doing, and I work in this space, and I can say that when we talk about inclusion, it's inclusion of all aspects of diversity. Yeah, so we do talk about all of these different aspects, and we dive deeper into what they want to explore a little further. Yeah, so that's how we, you know, plan it or design it. But what I do believe very, very strongly, and I think, you know, as corporates, corporations are very, very powerful vehicles of social change. Right? So if we are able to train people in our organizations on what all of this means, because there's so much hesitance, even to say the word gay, lesbian, people hesitate. Yeah? So once you say that it's okay and this is what it means, it's not a problem in the head, and you know, all of those, when we explain things to them, the awareness makes a huge change. And I'm going to share something very personal again with this Vayati project, the transgender project that we did. For the first time, as I left home, because I was coming into this group where there were 60 trans people, you know, I was very anxious. You know, what is this going to be like? I'm going to spend a whole day with this group, et cetera, et cetera. But by the time that I left, I was a huge advocate of the community. Believe me, it was the most empowering for me, because spending that whole day with them in classrooms, at round tables, discussions, how they came and spoke, you know, very, very candidly about their challenges and all of that, just made me believe that we just have to open our hearts, and, you know, a lot of things will happen on its own. It's just awareness for a lot of us.
Just to add to the discussion.
There is a short video that Srini helped us put together. This is on the Vayati project. Yeah, so you can get a sampling of the people that kind of went through this program. Not all of them, just a few of them.
Please.
Should we get up and...
If you could